What's up, guys? It's Josh Lau and Nathan Crawford here with TheCardGuyz. It is Tuesday, March 7th, 2023. And last weekend was the Battle Hardened in Charlotte. That was a pretty interesting event. This is kind of the, I don't know if you could call it the capstone event, but it was the final event basically of this season. Of the Dynasty season. Lots of spoilers came out for the Outsiders set, and I know a lot of you guys are going to be very interested to hear our thoughts on that, and we will take a couple of days to look at this set, and we will record a video with the rest of the team, talk about our thoughts about the heroes, and we'll probably make a tier list because that's what we do. So let's just that's another video, right? So let's get to the main topic of this video. So the main topic of this video is to talk about our experiences at Charlotte. What decks did we play? What were our deck lists? Why did we play what we played? Our thoughts on the metagame, and kind of going forward. Friday we drove from Atlanta to Charlotte, and we got there just in time. And for the Super Armory, what did you play in the Super Armory, and how was that?
Super Armory was good. I enjoyed that. It was really relaxed. Had a good time. A lot of banter, stuff like that. I ended up playing the same deck for all three events. Of course, Briar, and we managed to go 4-0 at the Super Armory. So overall, pretty good.
Yep. Friday, I was actually still undetermined what I was going to actually play for the PTI event, or for the Battle Hardened. So I played Bolton at the Super Armory. Went 2-2. Won against Bravo and Dorinthia. Lost against Dramai and Briar. Is what it is. Not much to say about those games. It's fairly straightforward. Sometimes you see your combo fast enough, sometimes you don't. And Dramai is a absolute nightmare for Sabres Bolton. I actually think Bolton is it's, from what we've seen in the next set, I think Bolton's in for a very tough time. There's a lot more interaction, which is very bad for the combo decks. And there's obviously no Raiden support. There's no generic support. Like, even if there was good generic cards for Bolton, they'd have to be god tier for him to include them in his deck because of the constraints of having to build the light cards. But that's okay. Bolton can sit on the sidelines for a little bit because the next set after that, Dusk Till Dawn, which comes out in like June or July, will be focused around the light versus shadow struggle, battle, war. And that is sure to have a lot of support for Bolton, right? With that awful Super Armory, I was like, all right, we're just going to play Dory. And I made a few switches to my PQ list. And mainly it was taking out a few cards that were cute, but not particularly powerful. I'll kind of run through that when we run through that.
Blue Pummel.
Yeah. well, that Blue Pummel is a coin flip card. Yeah. If it's heads, it goes in the deck. If it's tails, it doesn't go in the deck, right? So people don't know if it's in there or not, right? That's a card that benefits from when people think they know my deck list, right? Anyways, let's talk about the main event, the Battle Hardened. Do you want to go first, or should I go first?
Up to you.
Let's have you go first, and then we'll.
Okay.
Because I think my story is a little longer than yours.
Sure. So overall,
so let's talk about your deck list first, I guess, and then we'll talk about your record and all that. So let's pull that up.
Yeah, sure. So like I said, I took Briar. For those of you looking at the link that'll be in the description, you'll notice that it's very similar to the Tark list that he posted. It's 2 cards different. I think I took out his he sideboarded and mainboarded Exude, and I took both of them out, put Crown of Seeds in the sideboard, and put Entwined Lightning in the mainboard, just to help with the go again, to kind of solidify, especially because Lightning Press was in there, ended up paying off in a lot of spots. I do like that, and because the whole ping yourself with the Bramble Rights Loop, I don't think Exude's very necessary. But the idea of taking that deck, I usually operate Briar on a 30-30 split.
Mhm.
But those of you who saw the stream match, I favor cards like Yellow Rabble, things like that have the natural go again. So I just wanted to try the Brody and kind of Tarek philosophy on bringing like a 32-28 favoring non-attacks, because it's operating on the same idea. It's like understanding that it's not okay having like 26 cards in your deck that don't have like natural go again, that you have to supply the go again in some way. And I'm just, in the way I historically built Briar, I just did it by adding Rabble, stuff I didn't have to worry about. It was just on the
Mhm.
card. Whereas they are running less attacks, so you have a higher chance of drawing 2 non-attacks to give. So it's the same idea, just a different strategy. So I just wanted to try it. I ditched my deck that I played at Indy. I played one game on this list, and I was like, yeah, seems to be working, so we'll take it. And it performed well. I don't have any complaints other than just Room Blades doing Room Blade stuff.
Mhm.
But we'll get into the matches.
Um, I'm gonna ask some questions because I think the viewers will
Yeah.
have a few questions. The first card that stands out to me is the 2 copies of Talisman of Warfare. Can you tell me a little bit about that card?
Yeah, it's just Lexi Hate, of which I played none of. So,
Ah.
yeah, it's just anytime you can manufacture any type of go again, even if it's like just an E strike out front.
Mhm.
And then what you can do is you can just play the Talisman and then Rosetta out of nowhere. Whereas
Mhm.
typically they get to see the non-attack up front. And then Rosetta coming in for 2 and 2 obviously
Mhm.
gives you 2 opportunities. They have to give you 2 cards or 1 card in armor in the form of AB,
Right.
um, to keep their arsenals.
Mhm.
And most of the time, it is a beneficial trade.
Right. I see.
Um, so
Um,
yeah.
we see that there are 2 copies of Amulet of Earth. Is that I was that in your list earlier? I don't
It
recall
was
seeing
not.
it.
Yeah, it
Mhm.
was not. So the idea of Amulet of Earth is it's a 0 cost Earth card. It doesn't block, but with there was one game where, players get caught up in like certain breakpoints and people form habits on making certain decisions. And a lot of the times Amulet can just escape somebody's mind, and you can just, pop it, and that force of nature or snatch will
Mhm.
come over. And so it's more of a surprise factor against very good players. You're not going to get away with that.
Right.
But it can force the fact that it must be respected, which is sometimes value enough.
Mhm. I guess the other card that is fairly common that I didn't see is the Aether Ironweave. Is that just not good in this style of Briar, or is that something that you just haven't included for a while?
I've never been on Ironweave in
Hmm.
Briar. Never. I've just thought that like you just get so much value off of Tunic.
Hmm.
And the way that I like to play Briar, I enjoy blocking with Briar. So I can very easily extend a game to 6, 7, 8 turns,
Hmm.
depending on what my channels look like, and I can easily get 4 to 8 value off that Tunic.
Hmm. Okay. Uh, yeah. Is there anything else you want to talk about on the deck list? If not, we
Nope.
can jump into your matches. Okay. All right.
All right.
So tell us how your 8 rounds went and any
Yep.
notable matches.
Yeah. So first one was the Icelander. Won that, and
The gem gods were not nice to you already in round 1.
yeah. Yeah, over the weekend, 40% of my matches were my worst matchup against Icelander. But we persevered somewhat, not as good as we'd like to, but
Hmm.
played 6 Icelanders, and total record against Icelander was 4-2, which is
Not
good.
bad.
And
Not bad.
the 2 that I lost were so close.
Mm-hmm.
They were so close.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, won 2 matches in a row, Icelander Dory, and then I played Michael Fang on Oldham.
Mm-hmm. I got to
It was a
catch a
great
little bit
game.
of the end of that.
Yeah,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
it was a great game. I did kind of replay it back in my mind, and I do think that there was 1 or 2 decisions that I could have made that could have increased my chances of winning. What ended up happening was I had a huge life lead, and I drew a hand of all non-attacks,
Mm-hmm.
and it ended up Michael was in the great position to be able to punish that by having a rouse, tunic, into choke slam and still arsenal.
That is
So,
as good as it gets, right? 7 into 8 with
yeah,
an odd hit and an arsenal still. Jeez.
and an arsenal.
Yeah.
So a 4 card 17 with an on hit, or 4 card 15 with an on hit.
Yep. And
And I had a life lead, like it was
mhm.
25 to like 4 or 3 or something like that.
Right. Which
And
is what you normally need to set up that rights loop.
right.
Mm-hmm.
And but what happened was I had to block, and then the next turn I didn't have, any embodiment, obviously, because I didn't have an attack. So then I drew a bunch of 2 blocks, and he came back at me with something relevant, and
Mm-hmm.
it just reset tempo and gave it for free.
Mm-hmm.
Not taking anything away from Oldham. He played it
Yep.
just about perfectly. I think there was 1 or 2, like,
Mm-hmm.
not activating crown or unnecessarily activating
Mm-hmm.
crown
Yeah. I
nuances, but
I actually have some questions for your round 2, round 3 matchup, right? I think maybe the viewers might want to know this either as well. So you played against a
yeah.
Dorinthia in round 2, and you've
Uh-huh.
obviously practiced a lot against me, right? Were there any
Yep.
things that Dorinthia did that I do differently? Is there anything that was noticeable there? And then same with Oldham. So when you play an elite Oldham player like Michael Fang, is there something that sticks out when he plays it versus regular degular not your regular degular, but regular degular
Right.
Oldhams, right? So, so obviously you beat that Dory, right?
Yeah.
Is there something that like stood out in your mind that is different between them and I?
The patience. He, a lot more willing to play on a 4 card hand instead of
Mm-hmm.
a 5 card setup.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I mean, just Dory trying to do Dory things.
Mm-hmm.
As
Okay.
far as Oldham,
Mm-hmm.
when you play against a good Oldham, you can't get away with anything. I took advantage of Michael 1 time,
Mm-hmm.
and it was the very first turn of the game. I did a very unconventional line of I chose to go first, and I said E strike for 7.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, what? And he like blocked 2 cards and then pitched a card for Rampart. Obviously kept like a red threat so he could clap back or whatever, and then I lightning pressed
Mm-hmm.
and was able to
Yep, some
start with 3
in.
damage. Yeah, 3
Um,
damage in, and more importantly, start with the embodiment, which is
Mhm.
the more important factor.
Mhm.
But other than that, in like 1 crown of seeds, it was just any time that it was very inconvenient for me to face an ice react, it was there.
Mhm.
Anytime that I could have a snatch, he prepped the blocks in a way that I'm not drawing off of it. And there's just no, so it actually changes your play style because, you know, if you play the snatch differently if you think it's actually going to land
Yep.
and you don't invest as much into it.
Mhm.
So it's a difficult matchup, but
Mhm.
yeah, he played great, and we ended up losing that one.
Yep.
Then I ended up playing a Bravo.
Yep. Round 4, you
Um,
played Bravo. Yep.
Yep, I will stand by. I think that matchup is so Briar favored. It's not even funny.
Mhm. Is there
And
anything in particular that makes that matchup easier than Oldham? I guess Oldham is the main thing is the ice react.
the secret sauce against Bravo is go second. Now I know a lot of people are gonna be like, wait, but you're gonna get dominated,
You might
and
have an
take
on-hit
damage.
effect or something. Yeah.
Right, right. But here's the thing: unless it's a dominated choke slam, spinal, or crippling, you don't care.
Even if it's crippling, it's just damage
So,
on turn 0.
well, it's a lot of damage
It's
if
a
you
lot
do
of
the math.
damage,
But
yeah.
if you do the math, right? If they like dominate a spinal, that's a 4-card exchange. So you're gonna block with a card. You're gonna take, a little bit of damage, whatever the case may be. You might have to give a little bit of armor, but now they don't have an arsenal. And then you start with tempo, which is the more important aspect. So really, choke slam's the only unfortunate one, but you have avenues to play around that because then you just don't pump. You just, play more sideways, if you will, with,
Right.
scars and things of that nature, right?
Hmm.
If the hand allows you, it doesn't always, but starting with tempo is the most important thing because you'll get that armor early.
Hmm.
And then from then, it's just embodiment management and then get that sink blow and arsenal and blow them out when they try to do something inefficient.
Right. Okay.
Other than that, on to another Icelander. Um, I played against Naib, and um, it came down to the match where he decided to go to 1 on a rabble that for hit a blue. So it came in for 2, and he was at 3. And that allowed him to keep an extra card, which allowed him in the damage cycle rotation, Wounded Bull Me, get one more physical attack in before being able to close it out on Arcane.
Yep.
Whereas he had already blocked with Peak, so if that rabble would have came in for 4, he would have been able to either Wounded Bull Me and not have an arsenal, or which is a completely different game, or just do nothing on his turn, which is a win-win for me either way. So barely lost that one, but once again, Naib's a great player. Can't take anything away from him.
Sure.
Then I played a Briar Mirror, close that one out. Interesting statistic that I mentioned to Josh before this video. Overall in the weekend, I went 15 and 11. I went X and 2 in both both events. Or not including the Super Armory. That was 4-0. So I guess 19-11 whatever, or 19 and 4 if you want to. So I went 15 and 4 in the big events totaled. And out of all those matches, not including the ones I lost, there was one match where I dropped below 13 life.
Hmm.
Now, statistically, or viewers getting a way to like extract value from that statement, I'm still working on gathering my thoughts. What does that translate to? And I think what I'm coming to is when you're a skilled player, I don't think you need a deck that has a lot of high roll potential, depending on the event. Because if you have a consistent deck, you don't need that many like eeks of value over your opponent.
I think it's also very metagame dependent. In the current
Right.
format, there is no tier 0 deck. In the past, Chain and Starvo, pre-errata Briar, these were arguably at least tier 0.5. Probably most people would say they were tier 0 as well.
Right.
Especially Starvo at certain points before the certain bans, right? Whereas it didn't, I would argue, like, it didn't matter how big the skill difference is. Like,
Right.
it doesn't take a genius to fuse and casino your way to victory, right? Against certain heroes, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like so yeah, that just one of those thoughts at me as a player possibly moving to a more consistent deck based off of data points. I'm still working on gathering data like that, and trying to find value in it and kind of what I can do as a player to increase my performance and capitalize on bigger events. Absolutely. But after that Icelander lost, I won out. I played a Briar Fi and Icelander going X2 in the battle hard and finishing 15th.
Okay. there's one point I want to make here is that
Mhm.
um you have been playing Briar for a very, very long time, and Briar at its worst has been tier 1.5. At its worst, its representation in the meta has been like 8%, right? Sometimes it was higher than 20 at at US Nats. I think it was like 35 or something like that, right?
And
So
Lil was big. Yep.
so because people have so many reps at this point against Briar, I think that might lead to some inconsistencies in terms of like even average players know how to play that matchup because it's just so common. Elite players obviously know that matchup basically perfectly, right? And that might create less opportunities to use your skill difference, basically.
Normally, I would say for like 90% of the decks, I would say that's an accurate statement, with the exception being Briar, actually,
Oh,
because,
okay.
well, you can't, let's face it, it's hard for decks to interact with Briar unless you're ice. You just can't,
You have
right?
to have the
Like,
correct interaction on the CMH turn. You either have it or you don't.
right. And even then, if depending, like, if you're not ice,
Mhm.
then I get to choose whether I interact with your interaction, right? Like if Katsu throws a surging strike and a whelming, like I can just give you the card. I don't have to interact with you on my CMH turn.
Mhm.
Ice is really the only deck that has agency to where like I literally have to, other than Azalea, of course.
Other than
Um,
decks that literally present lethal damage. That
Correct.
too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's either
Mhm.
Azalea, Ice,
Or
Bravo, or
triple
lethal.
Art of
That is
Warfire or something. Yeah. Mhm.
that's it. That's all that I have to interact with. So yeah, I think it's literally when you operate a deck that has a polarizing ratio within it,
Mhm.
and for Rune Blades, that's attacks, non-attacks, right? For Rangers, it's arrows, non-arrows, right? What's the worst hand that Icelander can draw?
Triple
What?
Fendel's Fighting Spirit and a blue.
Right. Well, okay, okay. What like common what's a very bad common hand in Icelander? Like 4 ice blues, right?
Mhm.
That still
Block, block,
blocks
block.
9
Yeah.
and can be disruptive. It can be channel like frit. Like there's still things that you can do to progress the game.
Yep.
Whereas a deck like Briar and Rangers, their whole strategy is to take the game over and seize tempo, and then out of nowhere can just give it away for free. And it's
Yeah.
because of the ratio within the deck. It's the same
Aggro
Bravo
decks.
philosophy,
Mhm.
right? If Bravo cripplings you and he draws 4 rinky dink blues that are unmovable and what a stamp authority, like what, like he can just draw some real trash, right, and just give you that tempo, whereas Oldham has some ability to go find something with Crown and things like that. So decks that operate on a hard ratio that is like make or break,
Mhm.
it induces a version of variance that can be very unforgiving.
Mhm.
And I think
Okay.
that's what it is.
Mhm. All right.
I mean,
Yeah. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, ask any player that's done very well, like top 8 at a big event on a deck like that, and ask them if they had a lot of good fortune or dodged a lot of misfortune in that tournament, and I guarantee you, I mean, what Matthew Folks, I heard I can't confirm this, but I heard somebody say that like he hit like 4 or 5 Tome of the Arknights, which statistically is like outrageous in the tournament of Lil. Like that's a 25% chance to hit if you're on an even ratio, and that's you're not casting that card every game, right? So like that's just unreal. Not taken away from, I'm not saying that he got lucky and squeaked out. No, I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying that a deck that operates on feast or famine to do to go to top 8, you gotta have a lot of fortune. You really do.
Sure. Well, speaking of more consistent decks, then
That's right.
we're gonna talk about Dorinthia, who I think actually has one of the more stable matchup spreads in the game, and a lot of agency in her play. So I guess we'll recap the Battle Hardened, and then we'll go to the PTI event. I chose Dorinthia Iron Song for the Battle Hardened. You can see my list on the screen now. This list is fairly similar to my PQ3 deck list, except some of the fat has been cut out. Those cute blue cards are gone for, Blue Warrior's Valor. Things like Remembrance, Oasis Respite, these things are gone. We still have, 2 routes, 2 overpowers. We added in Nourishing Emptiness because sometimes CNC is bad. And we still want a attack action. We took out the yellow shunts as well, just to add a little bit more attack reactions here and there. But other than that, it is fairly similar. I guess the main change is that there's 3 sync blows now. So the reasoning behind that is the old 8 to 9 shunts was basically for the more mid-rangey Oldhams, and now the Oldhams, I had a conversation with Brody, and I told him, like, ironically, the matchup against Oldham actually got worse with Winter's Well going away, because now instead of being like in this lane, they have decided to go very aggressive or very defensive. And if they are very defensive, 8 shunts is never going to win you the game. If they are very aggressive, you rather have Sink Below. So the reasoning being is, if you look at like the matchups against Bravo in the past, the game would go so long that your Tunic would come up and then you'll shunt, your Tunic would come up and then you'll shunt. But actually nowadays, even Bravos can actually be pretty quick in terms of their aggression. So you're not always going to have your Tunic on 3. So Sink Below is significantly better there, right? But yeah, Sink Below in general is only being brought in when we would need shunts in general. It's basically acting as shunts you don't have to pay for, because those decks are very quick, actually. The game is, against aggressive Oldham, against aggressive Bravo, the game is not going to last 18 turns.
Right.
And the power of Sink Below is that you can often block with a card plus armor and then counteract. So you would block evenly, and then they would pummel it. You would put Sink Below, and now you have a lot of tempo, right? Because they obviously had to take damage to hold a card plus hold pummel, right? And oftentimes it becomes very, very obvious when Oldham has a pummel because they stop crowning things away. That's generally when they're trying to set up with CNC, right? Okay, anyways, that's the deck list. Let's talk about the matchups. So round 1, I sit down and my opponent never shows up. So I mean, I got paired into somebody, but he was like, Josh Lau? No, I don't know why he didn't show up, but that guy didn't show up, and the judge gave me the win after 10 minutes or so. So that allowed me to walk around and take a look at the metagame, which I guess we haven't talked about yet. But I basically got to walk around, and I was like, okay, this metagame looks about what I expected. I remember, telling my teammates there that, okay, there's less Lexi than in Indy. There's more Dromai than in Indy, and everything else was about the same. I saw a little bit more Reinhardt than I expected, but yeah, other than that, looked very, very standard. As you can see, there were, Dromai was actually the most played deck. Was that surprising?
Absolutely. I was floored.
Yeah.
I had
18
no idea that
Dromais.
was gonna happen.
And of note, I came across like 4 different styles of Dromai during that tournament. So, you know, Dromai is, I guess a lot of people just enjoy playing Dromai. And I, I mean, on paper, Dromai has a pretty good Icelander matchup. Does decently against most of the field. Only weak against Phi. Could be weak against very good Oldhams as well. But I guess maybe they're trying to think ahead. Like, if Lexi becomes popular, Dromai is one of the best heroes against Lexi. But then we have Briar, Icelander coming up with, 16 each. So about, 11, 12% metagame share. Pretty normal. No surprises there. Icelander, metagame share a little bit higher than an indie. I guess it's just because Icelander has been performing very well. And people are like, oh, she's not dead. Okay, let me go take her out for a spin. Phi being 14, I don't really see any surprises there. Bravo being 12, Bravo dash Oldham, no surprises there. I mean, I'm not really surprised once we get past Dromai being first.
Yep.
I guess Lexi being only 4 was a little surprising. I think
I was shocked on that, especially off the strong performance in Auckland. I was kind of shocked on the low representation for both Dash and Lexi. Really surprised on that.
Sure. But yeah, that kind of rounded out things. Azalea and Arachne, sadly, nobody was brave enough to take them. But I think that might change in the next set.
Outsiders hasn't came out yet.
Yeah, I think for sure. All right, let's get back to my tournament there. All right, so round 1, DNS. Round 2, I play against a Dromai. This Dromai played more traditional dragons. There were some attack actions, but there was enough dragon food for me to just eat them. And
which do you prefer?
I prefer when the Dromai plays very aggressively.
Okay.
Especially if I get to go first. And because the aggressive decks normally have a lot of trouble producing Ash compared to the more dragon focused decks generally can produce Ash much easier.
Right.
But yeah, so there was just a key turn where I was able to break through on a glistening, and I think it just kind of snowballed from there. So we got that one. Round 3, I played against another Dromai, and I was like, oh, another Dromai. I don't have to, sideboard in and out. I just presented the same deck. And this guy flipped over Iris of Reality, Wave of Reality. I was like, wait, what is going on here?
Yeah.
It was basically, Aura Dromai, which is actually like a pretty easy matchup for Dorinthia as long as you're aggressive, because they basically have to hold. What they want to do is block a little bit, hold a card to, attack with Iris, and then maybe put down another Aura. And Dorinthia has a very easy time destroying the spectral shields. Doesn't matter how many spectral shields you have. I mean, overpower, they're all gone, right? And that matchup just kind of snowballs. So we took that one. Round 4, we played against Briar. I don't remember much about this matchup. There were just too many matchups. But we got that one. Round 5 was on camera. It was against Levia. It was against Jacob. That was pretty interesting. There was basically a moment in the game where I had Glistening Steel Blade on the board, and then he was like, no blocks, and I was like, all right, we're doing this, huh?
Let's do it.
And the game ended very, very quickly after that, right? Basically I got him to a point where he would either die to Blood Debt or have, like, if he wants to survive, he has to block, right? And that's so Kano and Icelander get an extra turn with Stormstriders. Levia is kind of the opposite, whereas like you lose one less turn, right? So that's kind of how it is. It's like if your opponent can force you to block, you've lost, right? Whereas most decks can drop down to 1 or even kill you in response to you presenting lethal, right?
Yep.
Okay. Then we played against Icelander. This was a pretty good matchup. I've said several times that I think Dory versus Icelander is a pretty good matchup now. Not good in the sense that like it's favored for Dory. I would say it's actually probably about even. But there's a lot more play now that there's no hypothermia. Like hypothermia was just
it just made it unfair.
You were basically never hitting them twice. With the amount of disruption that their deck had with Channel Lake Frigid, Hypothermia, Blizzard, Insidious Chill. Like realistically, there was no way you were hitting them twice, right? But now there's much more play that you can make. We got that one. That one, I felt like my opponent kind of went on tilt a little bit because the first couple turns I was able to break through, and it was very difficult for them to establish, that general tempo that Icelander wants. And once you kind of get knocked out of your groove, especially early on as Icelander, like you got to really, buckle down and like kind of slow the game down, try to reset, right? And he was, I kind of felt like he was a little bit on tilt there. Then round 7, we played against another Icelander. So at this point, we're 6-0, right? So we're basically locked for top 8. We're just playing for positions now. Played against another Icelander. This Icelander was buddies with the round 6 Icelander. And this Icelander played a little bit more slowly than the other one. And this was a little bit closer of a game. But again, Iron Song Pride in that matchup, if you see it really early, is really hard for them to deal with, because once you put out Iron Song Pride, you basically just play protect the counter and kind of pick your spot carefully. And then if you break through and get a second counter, that basically forces them to stop doing their Wounded Bull bullshit. Because if they attempt to keep 3 cards, which is basically what they have to do to send a Wounded Bull at you, that means they're not blocking, which means you're going to get your third counter, which generally leads to them dying very, very quickly. So that's kind of the key in that matchup, is that if you get a quick counter, you could often just kind of sit on that and then kind of go from there. And that was kind of the difference between those 2 games and then my quarterfinals game, which we'll talk about later. And then round 8, we're playing against Dromai again, and this is the one. I don't know if you guys saw this on Twitter, but this is where I got 13 counters on Dawnblade. Basically, I was playing against Dromai. This was a more dragon-focused Dromai. I killed dragons for a few turns, and then I played Glistening Steelblade, broke through with an Overpower. With a Twinning Blade, got 4 counters there, and then I drew another hand with Glistening Steelblade and broke through again. And like it said in the tweet, it's not every day you have to use a D20. So that was that. Overall, the gem gods were not nice to me. Dromai, Icelander, Briar, and Oldhim. I didn't play any Oldhims in the Battle Hardened, but those are not good matchups overall. Dromai is a pretty tricky matchup because I would say if they brought the traditional dragon Dromai, that's actually the hardest one to deal with. But most of my opponents were playing kind of in the middle or slightly aggressive focused or really off the wall, right? So those weren't that bad. And then the Icelanders, that can be bad, but I got lucky with early Iron Song Prides. Anyways, so we get out of the Swiss rounds in first seed. Can't complain about that, obviously. So we take the top 8 picture, and then the judges tell us to sit here and play our match, and then the stream manager comes over and says, you guys need to go to the feature match. And actually, you and Will commentated on the feature match, right?
We did. Yeah.
So if you guys want to watch Dorinthia games, you could watch the round 5 against Levia, or round I guess the quarterfinals, round 9 against Icelander. Okay, so this matchup begins with Uh, so my opponent in the quarterfinals is Icelander. I get the option of going first or second. And so this is something that at some point, you get like, I don't know if it's called imposter syndrome, or your confidence gets kind of questioned, because every single Icelander in the last 3 months that I've played, whenever they won the dice roll, they chose to go first. And every single time I won the dice roll, I chose to go second, which means one of us is wrong. Either it is the 12, 13, 14, 15 Icelanders,
Right.
which include really good players like Viet Pham and Majin Bay.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, this is something that I remember shuffling my deck, and I was like, that made me like really like think carefully. I'm like, this is an elimination match, right? And I have the choice of first or second. And I chose to go second, right? And I don't know if the game outcome would be different, because he didn't really do that much on turn 1 or turn 0. But now that I kind of think about it more and more and more, like, at some point, you know, that meme where it's like, am I the one that's wrong here? No, it's them, right? So
No.
so this is something that I've been like thinking about more and more and more. What do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Were you surprised as a commentator to see him going first?
I was a little bit. Basically, it's kind of the same thought process for Briar, and I prefer to go first in that matchup. Although the matchup on both of our ends is basically comes down to tempo, right? It's a tempo match. It's not really anything more than that. And so if it's a tempo match, why would you not go second and, start with tempo? But for me, it's a risk mitigation tactic is what it is by going first. I'm not talking about damage. I don't I'd rather take 3 arcane and go second than face down a wounded bull by them going second. Right? It makes more sense to just eat the arcane and start going at them. But what I need to do as a Briar player is secure a blue, have a source of go again, and since I play grasp into that matchup, going first, I can craft my hand in a way to where they better have something good, because my first real turn, I'm coming in hot, and I just need to be able to do that out the gate. Whereas every time I went second, I just felt like I was missing something out of the hand. Had too much of this, too little of this, whatever the case may be. And
I mean, what you're missing is your 5th card, right? So
right.
When you go second, your first turn, you're playing against an Icelander with an arsenal with only 4 cards. So the chance you actually break through for a lot of damage is basically 0.
Right.
So that's kind of something that likewise is with the Dory. Like, when the Icelander has an arsenal and you try to attack them with 4 cards, the chance of you breaking through with 0 counters on your weapon is very low. I guess the only difference that I've seen is that, like, if I start turn 0 with Iron Song Pride, I think like that's basically over for them. So a lot of the ways that you play that Dory versus Icelander matchup, you play protect the counter. Once you get a counter, you just protect it. And then if you get the right hand, you go for it. You try to break through for your second counter. If you get 2 counters on the weapon, that basically stops their wounded bull bullshit. Like I said, they basically have to lay their whole hand down to stop the bleeding. Right? They can't even try to get a fused Aether Ice Vein with an Insidious Chill trigger, because that doesn't rip enough cards. Because you'll just keep your blue, you'll keep your pump. Maybe you have a pump in arsenal, and even then, the next turn they have to lay their whole hand down to reset the counters, right? So, and by then they've taken a lot of damage. There's a giant life lead, and then you can kind of ride it out with tempo from there. But yeah, anyways, during that game, I just kind of felt like I didn't quite have the right offense. There was very very key turn that unfortunately wasn't really on camera. There was like internet issues or something, but that was one of the most complicated turns in the whole game, because he played Ice Eternal from Arsenal, I believe, and gave me 2 frostbites, right? And I had to calculate. There was just a lot of back and forth there. There was, had to pay for the Insidious Chill, and he refused the Ice Eternal with a Blizzard, right? So I had to calculate, like, can I still have a turn here if I have to pay for the Insidious Chill, pay for the Blizzard, pay for the Frostbite, and pay for the 2 frostbites that Ice Eternal created, right? So it's a very, very complicated situation. That actually took quite a bit of time to see, to finish. But unfortunately, that part of that wasn't on stream. But in the end, I already knew, like, halfway through the game I was kind of in trouble because I didn't have a counter on my weapon. And that's kind of the, like, I had like a 10 life lead or so in the mid game, but I didn't have a counter on my weapon. So the issue with that is that you're kind of running out of time to start that snowball, right? So even though you have a life lead, like, you having that first counter is like really, really, really important. And I think there was one situation where I might have misplayed. I think I discarded an Iron Song Pride to a chill trigger, where it might have been better just to pay a blue and then use the 2 from the blue to pay for the chill trigger and then play out Iron Song Pride. I have to watch it back. I'm not exactly sure, but
Right.
anyways, we tried our best. We like this is one of the first times Dory has like gotten top 8 in a while, I think. But yeah, we got this this super sweet Kodachi playmat.
Looks good.
It does look good, and yeah, for those of you who know me a little bit, you may know that I actually played Ninja a little bit as my off class. So the next set maybe we'll have some we'll have some Kodachi action. That'll be nice. Yep. Okay. So that was the Battle Hardened. Overall, I think we both did pretty well. A little bit of tighter play here and there would have helped, but overall, not bad. We come back the next day and we play the PTI event. And the PTI event, I think we both run it back exact same 80, right? Yep, same. Okay, so I guess are there any notable matches that you want to talk about for the PTI event?
Just one. And it was actually the best game of Flesh and Blood I've played this year.
Oh.
Starting things off, I lost, but it was still
that's okay. I had a very good game as well against Briar that I lost, but yeah, you go for yours.
Yeah, his name was I think Pierre was his name, and it really it's the reason that I enjoy Flesh and Blood in our community especially was there was a lot of banter. We were just laughing, having a good time. But not only that, it was just a very good game as well. It was against the Icelander, and it came down to I had a channel Mount Heroic. And it was one of those spots where, as the Briar player, you just have to take a chance. And if they have something, then you lose, and that's just how it goes. But if they don't, that's your out, right? And so I had a channel Mount Heroic. He disrupted me a little bit, got 2 cards out of my hand, and I had 2 red attacks. Still had Snapdragons, and I go, and he responds to embodiment. He goes, "No." I said, "Let's go." So I play the snatch, and I'm just holding a red card, and he then blocks. He's at 1, by the way.
Oh, okay.
He blocks 3, and then sink blow, and he says trigger sink, sinks a card, draws it, immediately, just in one fluid motion, just lays it down, hits me with the Blizzard.
No.
He just top decked the Blizzard. And so at that point, he had the Emeritus in Arsenal. So he was able to basically present damage in a way, and I only had a red. and then he just killed me the next turn with arcane
Yep.
on his turn, and
Mm-hmm.
it literally just came down to that top deck. But it was just such a good game. It was so much
Yep.
back and forth,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
he made it so much fun. It was just great
Mm-hmm.
overall. Going from the Battle Hardened to the PTI, I always have the mentality that I have to do better than the previous event.
Mm-hmm.
Battle Hardened, I landed 15th, and I had to do better. So PTI event, I landed 14th.
14th. There you go. Good job. Yeah, that's
X
not
and
bad.
2.
There you go. X and 2. Yep. Yeah, I had some great banter with some of my opponents as well. Like, I remember I played an E-Pot, and then he played Kyloria, and then he started attacking me with Kyloria. I was like, dude, I don't have my copper yet to offer your Kyloria.
Yeah.
Go away. Go away. Don't take my E-Pot. Go away. That was good banter. So yeah, my PTI event, I guess there's only two things I really want to talk about. So round 2, I play against Mara. This was actually a really, really, really good game. Basically, I decide to let an Aether Ashwing stick around for like 7 turns, and that little Aether Ashwing, which Mara named Frank, with that burn them all. So basically, burn them all. This was kind of the mid game, right? So the graveyard was kind of stacked, right? And then I was being so aggressive that a lot of cards were being blocked with and going into the graveyard. So that burn them all ticked all the way down to 8 or up to 8, right? And so that little Ashwing dealt me like almost 20 damage. And,
16, yeah.
Something like that. Crazy amount of damage. And it was just a really, 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 really good game. There were some really, really funny moments. I remember even turn 0 and turn 1 were actually really hilarious. Turn 0, I play blue hit and run, pitch a card, and I swing Dawnblade. And then Mara's like, well, I don't really need this hand. And then I saw that one of the burn them alls was blocked with it. I'm like, okay, makes sense. This is going to be burn them all food, right? Just block 10, right? 4 cards. Right. I'm like, okay, sweet. Nourishing Emptiness. So that's like, got him. Okay. And then Mara was like, okay, so that's the only popper, I guess. Yeah, that's perfect. Sure, draw 5. I don't care. Right? Yeah. The next hand I draw, I think it was a blue or red. I can't remember. I think it was a blue. And then Command and Conquer, Command and Conquer, Command and Conquer. Okay, that is my next hand, right? Okay.
Wow.
And so, because of what happened turn 0, Mara was like, "Oh, I could just
no poppers. Yeah,
no poppers. Just go for it, right?" And so, I pop it with CNC, and Mara's like, "Oh, you're playing CNC too?" I'm like, "Yeah." All right. So then it ends Mara's turn, right? Yeah. And then I have to pitch a CNC and attack with Dawnblade. I'm like, "See, there's another popper that's gonna go to the bottom." And Mara was like, "Sweet, perfect." So what is going through Mara's head at this point, right? It's like, okay, there's 3 poppers already gone, right? There's no way he has the other one, right?
No way.
So I arsenal the blue, right? And I keep the CNC, and then I pop another dragon. And, props to Mara for being mentally resilient in that game. Like for that to be the start of the game.
Right.
Like,
and just hang in there.
And hang in there, That's how to do it. But yeah, it was a really good game, back and forth and all that. Went down to, the very, very end there. One of the greatest games of the year, actually. The other thing I want to talk about is I had to play against 2 Oldims for about 2 hours.
Nice.
Which is not how I want to spend my Sunday afternoon, but it is what it is. Dory against Oldim is just so tough. I managed to get there barely in round 5, but round 6, as a Dorinthia main, when you play against an Oldim and then I guess Oldims, they want to go faster in the game, right? So normally when I'm playing, I'm very, very verbal. I'm like, this is Warrior's Valor, gives +2 to the weapon, and go again. I get out my dice and all that. And I got that vibe from my opponent that he's like, I don't need training wheels. Just play your cards, right? I'm like, uh-oh, this guy plays Dory. You get that vibe against certain people when you don't have to explain what your cards do to them. And this Oldim knew what he played quick, and he knew what all my shit did. And I was like, uh-oh. And then he played his first Fate for Scene. I was like,
That's it.
I think you could even hear me like complaining about this 3 tables down. I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna be here a while.
Yeah.
I gave him as good a match as I can, but in the end, I can't quite get there. Overall, I think I went 4-3. I got 16th. Oh well. What can you do? Overall, I think I went. So that's same as you, 16 and, or sorry, 12 and 4. So, I guess technically one of my opponents didn't show, so 11 and 4. Anyways, yeah, we'll count that. All right, so that was our trip. We headed back after that. There were a lot of spoilers for the next set. In fact, we basically have the whole set at this point, except other than the Fable, right?
Just the Fable. Just the Fable.
And, obviously that could be extremely impactful. But
right.
I guess, like, we're going to make a video, like I said at the very beginning, about this. But is there any, like, quick thoughts on how you think the metagame's going to shape up? And anything that's like you're interested to try?
I will say this. If you currently or are looking into playing a deck that either dreams of 5-card hands or needs 5-card hands or even 4-card hands, pivot off of it now, because I'd literally think that LSS printed this set to force people not to just like stand in the ring and slap each other till one passes out, right? They don't want it to be that game. Which, crazy enough, that's actually a sport now, Josh, if you didn't know. So like people just literally slapping each other.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Like
it's
the stupidest thing.
And then like they have like 2 people like standing behind them to catch them when they faint, right? Yeah,
it's crazy. So I think they're literally they'll obviously accomplish it very easily in limited format. And I think that depending on whether certain people adopt, like Azalea and some other heroes, I mean, there's just so many on-hit effects and like crippling stuff like toxicity. Like I don't think it's like an off-the-wall card, but if you don't block, you're taking 5
or 4 or 3, but that's still ridiculous rate.
Right, that's Revel is what that is. That's Revel in Viscerai. Like it's insane, and it's way easier to just play it with Go Again instead of having to play a non-attack, then Revel, and then figure all that out. So like, and that's not even counting the Dominate, right? So then you have Katsu. Everybody knows Katsu. You got to block. You just can't let him do his own thing. If he does his own thing,
he's going to be much harder to block now as well, because like things like Be Like Water, like you don't know what's coming, right?
Right. And so really the best advice I can give people when they're building new decks, playing with the new cards, is try to find. You don't have to go mid-range. You don't have to go control. Just find a deck that can do something at least on rate or slightly above rate with 2 to 3 cards. If you can't do that, I hate to say it, but I don't think it's going to be in a great spot. I just don't. I literally... This set could be so bad. I don't think Briar could LL this year. Like it could be. It could now. She might just high roll her way there because she has that potential, and she's so close. Because RTN season, she'll probably get there. But if it wasn't for that, there's a good shot that she wouldn't go there, and especially Viscerai. So yeah, to sum it up, be able to play off 1 or 2 cards, maybe 3. But still find ways to utilize 4 or 5. Like you don't want to give up that strategy. Just don't rely on it.
Sure. There was another thing that you pointed out that I thought was very hilarious. You were like, "There's a lot of 6-power cards in this set,"
Yeah.
and you were making the analogy that video game boss fights. I'll let you tell the story.
Yeah, somebody posted on Twitter that it was like, in a video game, before you get to a boss fight, they always like give you a bunch of potions.
You're like, open a chest, like, why do I need this? Potion of max restore. Oh, that's kind of, I haven't seen one of those.
And then it's like, because it just kicks your ass when you get in there, and that's why you needed it. So maybe all these 6 attacks are for the new illusionist.
Yeah.
However, I'm gonna make a prediction. I don't think it's for that. What I think they're doing, if you look at the set, it's almost impossible to play a 5-card hand.
Yeah.
Literally.
This limited set will be quite interesting because there's gonna be a lot of back and forth.
Like, you go to Outsiders, right? It was so easy to go head jab, all the way down. But all you have is Rabble, Come to Fight, and a couple pumps for Ranger that don't really work with a lot of the other classes and reactions, right? But you can't go too heavy on that. Arachne's the only one that's got Go Again, and it's only his first attack. Like, they are literally forcing you to interact with each other, and the best advice I can give you on a limited consensus is embrace that. The developers of this game had a clear intentions on how they wanted it to be played. And I would start the draft process adapting that ideal very quickly, because if there was any way to cheat that, I believe in them enough to where they would have scouted that out. And, you're not just going to be able to draft all Rabbles and then just go ham, right? Come up with a strategy that's interactive, that once again plays off of some cards, blocks well. Those are going to be key fundamental. And I think this limited format will really show who the great limited players are, because it's not about who's going first or second. It's not about anything. It's going to be truly interactive play.
Interactive even in the drafting section, because there's 6 heroes.
Right. Yeah. Right. And not only that, but like just fundamentals of the game. It's going to test everybody instead of just, oh, I got a bunch of 4 go-agains. I win, right? I think LSS did a great job with this set. I don't think it's overpowered. I don't think there's any power creep. I think they are just shifting how they want the players to play the game, and that's okay.
And if it looks like this will probably shake up the CC metagame as well. So if they are able to create a great limited set and a passable sealed set, as well as a metagame change, that's what that gets an A grade from us. So on paper, it looks like this set is headed to being one of the greats. And we will obviously talk more about the cards in this coming week. So look out for that, guys. Is there anything else that you want to talk about before we wrap this up? We've been going for about an hour now.
That's it.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you guys for joining us. We're really, really happy that if you're still listening to this, you guys are
You're
great.
The realist.
Yeah. Yep. Just a few sponsors we want to thank. Fabrec, which speaking of Fabrec, I'm actually going to make a video very, very soon on some of the features for Fabrec, as well as how I'd like to use Fabrec to help me, tune some of my decks. And we also have another sponsor is Dragon Shield. We, them for the card sleeves and all that. And Card Culture as well. You guys can take a look at that. That is the clothing and card lifestyle brand that we got. We also have a Patreon. If you guys are interested in that, you guys can take a look there. We have deck guides and articles there. If not, you guys can just join our Patreon or join our Discord. We have a very, very active Discord. We got people there that talk about all things Flesh and Blood. That's the easiest way to contact us as well. But yeah, other than that, I think that'll wrap it up for us. we will be back very, very soon for the Outsiders, I guess, set review, card review.
Right.
And yeah, that'll be fun. All right, this has been Josh and Nathan. We'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.
Take care, everybody.